In this video, we're going to look at some different types of expectations that you can set for your students when participating in a written roundtable. Setting expectations and goals is pretty critical for students to develop the skills of discussion. So when you're setting expectations, there's kind of two main places that you can set these up. First is in the prompt itself, usually at the bottom below the discussion questions, but you can also reference back to these expectations in the peer feedback questions. So you can set up sentence stems and questions that align to what you're expecting of students in the actual comment and dialogue section. So when you're setting up the expectations in the prompt itself, usually you'll want to put them at the bottom so that when students are writing their own idea, they can reference these expectations before they actually submit their idea. This will give them a good sense on how to comment on other ideas, but then also they'll get a sense for how others are going to be viewing their work as they're writing it. So we're going to look at a few different examples of what you might set as expectations. First, this one's pretty simple. Ask students to leave 3 comments in the discussion. So you might ask them to be the first commenter on a certain post, be a second commenter on another post, so they're joining in the discussion, and then actually go and reply to one specific comment on a separate post. This way you have students now engaging in multiple different threads of conversation on your particular topic. And if you wanted, you could even highlight this in front of the class so that they know exactly, which one is a first comment, what's a second comment, and what does a reply look like. Here's a little visual that I used just to outline this for students. This is another simple little way of setting expectations for your class where you're asking students to leave different types of comments. So you might ask them to compliment an idea that somebody else has written. You might ask them to challenge one, ask a question, or simply paraphrase it, say it in a different way. So that's another simple way that you can set expectations for the comment section. Here's another example of very detailed expectations that you could use if you want the discussion to be a little more in-depth and you want students writing really substantial comments on each other's posts. So here's one where students are asked to respectfully respond to at least 2 or more classmates' posts with a response of 100 to 150 words, adding depth to the conversation. Ask a question to further the conversation. This could be clarification, wondering, or a challenge question. And then lastly, an actual reply. So replying to a comment under a post, you might ask them to respectfully reply to at least one of your classmates' posts on your original post with a response of 100 to 150 words, adding depth to the conversation. So really highlighting for students, the goal of the comment section is to add depth and continue the conversation further beyond the original submissions. All right, here's another example. This one is really focused on setting expectations around the discussion and kind of diversity of thought that we want to encourage in this classroom discussion. These are both reminders and expectations to get to a really great community-oriented conversation where we're focused on getting lots of different ideas. So here this teacher put some kind of learning goals around these expectations. So I expressed appreciation for the diversity of thought and expression in our class, even when my ideas were different than someone else's. I asked at least one follow-up question to stimulate further discussion. And of course, I checked notifications several times so that I didn't miss any replies to my writing. So this one is just another little action you're encouraging students to look for. Look in their little notification bubble to see if there's any replies on their posts or on their comments before they finish up on the discussion so that they ensure that no discussion opportunity is left unchecked. So last but not least, if you're doing a peer review or peer feedback type of conversation, your expectations or instructions might look something like this. So you might ask students to read and comment on 3 peer posts or paragraphs. So they would consider, do they have a clear topic sentence that outlines the speaker's purpose and the rhetorical strategy used to achieve it? Did they include 2 quotations? Did they integrate their quotes properly to cite them and properly cite them? Do they explain how the rhetorical strategies help the speaker achieve their purpose? And do they follow the proper paragraph structure? here is where you would put some of these expectations into the peer feedback questions that will appear below each individual student's post. So for example, you could remind students again, ask a question, what are you curious about because of their commentary, what follow-up questions come to mind, and is there anything that you'd like clarified? Honor your own and others' writing, so acknowledge something specific about their writing, celebrate their successes and empathize with their challenges. And then lastly, identify where they used a particular strategy in their writing. So was this effective or ineffective? And then have students go in and give feedback in that way. So again, any of the questions that you set up in the peer feedback questions are going to appear under each individual post in the discussion. So when students are going and leaving their first, second, third comment, they're going to see these questions here and they'll be able to respond to them. They could even click if you wanted them to respond to multiple questions.